Richmond, Virginia, March 2025. A contractor named Liam O'Connell stands on the second floor of the Oakhaven Inn and smells something that makes every instinct in his body scream at him to leave. Not rot, not mold, not the stale air and mouse droppings he expected from a building abandoned for 3 decades. Disinfectant, hospital grade, industrial strength, chemical disinfectant. So overpowering it burns the back of his throat and makes his eyes water. The Oakhaven Inn closed its doors in 1995. 30 years ago. 30 years of darkness. 30 years of silence. 30 years of a single room marked out of order on every faded maintenance log, every yellowed inspection report, every piece of paperwork Liam has managed to dig up. Room 212. The number haunts the building's records like a scar that never healed. But here's what makes Liam's skin crawl. Here's what keeps him standing in this hallway. At 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, his work boots covered in dust, his hard hat crooked on his head, staring at a wall that shouldn't exist. That smell, that overwhelming, suffocating smell of chemicals. In a building that's been sealed and empty since Bill Clinton was in his first term. Someone was in this room. Someone was cleaning. And they were trying very, very hard to hide something. Every contractor in Richmond knows about the Oakhaven Inn. They call it cursed. They call it the motel where the HVAC system screams at night. They say tools disappear from one room and show up in another. They say the second floor has cold spots that make grown men shiver in the middle of July. 4 different renovation crews walked off this job in the last 18 months. The last foreman quit after 2 days, citing structural concerns nobody could explain. Liam O'Connell doesn't believe in curses. He believes in building codes. He believes in blueprints and measurements and the cold, hard logic of load-bearing walls. He believes in the $2.3 million contract sitting in his truck that will save his failing construction company from bankruptcy. So when the developer offered him this job, full demolition, 6 weeks, Liam said yes, even though the bid was 30% higher than market rate. Even though 2 other contractors turned it down without giving reasons. Even though his own crew chief looked at the building and said, "Boss, you sure about this?" Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this investigation. If you're comfortable, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what drew you to Cold Trail today. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these untold stories to light. Now, let me tell you what happened to Ethan Holloway and Willow Diaz. Liam O'Connell is 34 years old, sleeping on his sister's couch in Henrico County, and staring down the barrel of complete financial ruin. 6 months ago, a strip mall renovation went catastrophically wrong. Faulty subcontractors, hidden structural damage, cost overruns that ate through his insurance and his savings. O'Connell Construction. The business his father started in 1987. The business Liam inherited and promised to protect, is now 3 months away from dissolution. The Oakhaven Inn demolition contract is his Hail Mary. His last shot. $2,300,000 for 6 weeks of work. Gut the entire building. Haul away the debris. Leave nothing but a concrete pad for the developer to build luxury condos. Simple. Straightforward. The kind of job Liam has done 100 times. Except nothing about the Oakhaven Inn is simple. Liam pulls his F-250 into the crumbling parking lot at 6:30 a.m. on March 3, 2025. The motel squats on a forgotten stretch of Williamsburg Road, surrounded by chain-link fence and 30 years of overgrown weeds. The building is a relic of mid-century American roadside architecture. 2 stories, faded turquoise paint, an arched portico over the entrance with half the letters missing from the sign. OKAEIN. The missing letters spell out the building's decay. His crew chief, Omar Jenkins, is already there. Omar is 46, built like a linebacker, with graying temples and the kind of steady, unshakable calm that comes from 25 years in construction. He's seen buildings collapse, workers injured, Projects go sideways in 1,000 different ways. Nothing rattles Omar. But standing in that parking lot, looking up at the Oakhaven Inn, Omar looks rattled. "Boss," Omar says as Liam climbs out of his truck. "You hear about this place? I heard it's a demo job." Liam replies, pulling on his work gloves. "I heard it pays. I heard 4 crews walked off, and we're the 5th, which means we're getting paid 30% more than standard rate." Liam slings his tool belt over his shoulder. "You know what that money means to us?" Omar nods slowly. He knows. The whole crew knows. O'Connell Construction is bleeding out. And this contract is the tourniquet. The rest of the crew arrives over the next 20 minutes. 8 men total. Young guys mostly, laborers who need the work. They gather in the parking lot, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee from gas station cups, eyeing the building with the kind of skepticism construction workers reserve for jobs that sound too good to be true. Liam gives them the speech. Standard safety protocols, asbestos procedures, hazmat suits for the demo work. They'll start on the first floor, work their way up, section by section. 6 weeks, in and out. But Liam is lying. Not about the safety protocols or the timeline. He's lying about where they're starting, because the night before, sitting in his sister's living room with the property records spread across her coffee table, Liam found something that made his contractor's instincts scream. The maintenance logs for the Oakhaven Inn, going back to 1985. Every room in the building has a repair history. Leaky faucets, broken air conditioners, carpet replacements. The endless small catastrophes of a budget motel. Every room except one. Room 212. The only entry for room 212 is dated March 17th, 1995. Closed for mold remediation, sealed pending environmental clearance. 30 years ago. And never reopened. Liam knows mold remediation. It takes weeks, maybe a couple of months for severe cases. You don't seal a room for 3 decades unless you're hiding something. And the developer, a nervous young guy in an expensive suit who met Liam at a Starbucks to sign the contract, specifically mentioned it. "There's a mold situation on the 2nd floor," he said, not meeting Liam's eyes. "Room 212. It's been sealed since the 90s. Just tear it all out. Just tear it all out. Like it's simple. Like it's nothing." But Liam's gut tells him it's something expensive. Something legally complicated. Maybe asbestos. Maybe black mold. Maybe structural damage so severe it compromises the entire 2nd floor. Whatever it is, Liam needs to know before his crew gets exposed, before he's on the hook for medical costs or EPA violations, or any of the 1,000 nightmares that can bankrupt a contractor. So he's starting with room 212, first thing. Before the crew realizes what he's doing, the interior of the Oakhaven Inn is exactly what Liam expects. The front doors are padlocked, but Omar has them open in 30 seconds with a crowbar. The lobby is a time capsule of 1995. A check-in desk with a rotted laminate counter. A rack of faded tourist brochures, advertising colonial Williamsburg and Busch Gardens. Water-damaged acoustic ceiling tiles sagging like wet cardboard. The carpet is brown and stiff with decades of mildew, crunching under their boots. The air is thick, stagnant, the kind of air that hasn't moved in years, heavy with dust and decay, and the faint ammonia smell of rodent urine. Liam's flashlight cuts through the darkness. The power has been off for 3 decades. The windows are boarded up. The only light comes from their flashlights and the thin morning sun leaking through gaps in the plywood. "First floor clears look structurally sound," Omar says, tapping a support beam with his hammer. "Cosmetic damage, water damage, but the bones are good." "Copy that," Liam replies. "You and the crew start setting up the debris chutes on the east side. I'm going to do a structural assessment of the 2nd floor." Omar gives him a look that says he knows exactly what Liam is doing. "You want company?" "I'm good." "Room 212? Liam doesn't answer. He heads for the stairs. The stairwell is narrow and dark. The steps creak under his weight. 30 years of settling, 30 years of moisture and temperature changes, 30 years of the building slowly giving up. Liam keeps one hand on the railing, testing each step before putting his full weight on it. The second-floor hallway stretches out before him, darker than the first floor, the boarded windows blocking even more light. He counts the rooms as he walks. 201, 203, 205, 207, 209, 211. All present, all accounted for. Doors hanging open or torn off their hinges. Rooms filled with debris and water damage and the skeletal remains of furniture. Everything matches the blueprint he studied last night. Then he reaches the space where room 212 should be. And there's just wall. Solid, unbroken wall. The faded turquoise paint continues seamlessly across the surface where a door should be. No frame, no hardware, no sign a door ever existed. The wallpaper in this section, a hideous floral pattern from the 80s, is slightly different from the rest of the hallway. Like someone tried to match it but couldn't quite find the right pattern. Liam stands there, staring at the wall, his flashlight beam playing across the surface. His brain is trying to reconcile what he's seeing with what the blueprint shows. According to the architectural plans filed with the city in 1967, room 212 should be right here, 18 feet deep, running from this hallway wall to the exterior wall of the building. A standard motel room, identical to all the others on this floor. But there's no door, just wall. Liam pulls out his measuring tape. He measures the distance from the hallway to the back wall of room 211, which should share a wall with 212. 12 feet. He measures it again, more carefully this time, making sure the tape is level and straight. Still 12 feet. 6 feet of space is missing. His heart starts beating faster. 6 feet isn't a rounding error. 6 feet isn't a drafting mistake. 6 feet is a room, a hidden space, a void in the building's geometry that shouldn't exist. And that smell, that chemical smell, it's stronger here, right at this wall, like it's seeping through the drywall, through the paint, through 30 years of concealment. Liam runs his hand along the wall. The texture feels different from the rest of the hallway. Slightly smoother, newer. He taps it with his knuckles. The sound is hollow. Definitely hollow. He crouches down and examines the baseboards. There's a seam, barely visible, filled and painted over, but it's there. Someone built this wall. Someone covered up room 212. Footsteps on the stairs. Omar appears at the end of the hallway, breathing hard from the climb. He's carrying a crowbar and a reciprocating saw. He doesn't say anything. He just walks up to Liam, looks at the wall, looks at the tape measure in Liam's hand, and nods. 6 feet? Omar asks. 6 feet. You want to open it? Liam hesitates. This is the moment. Once they breach this wall, once they see what's behind it, everything changes. If there's asbestos, they're looking at EPA notifications, remediation costs, project delays. If there's structural damage, they're looking at engineering reports and potentially walking away from the contract. But he doesn't finish that thought, because he already knows. Deep in his gut, in that place where contractors develop instincts after years of tearing open walls and finding the secrets buildings hide, he already knows this isn't asbestos or structural damage. This is something worse. Yeah, Liam says. We're opening it. They start with the drywall. Omar drives the claw end of his crowbar into the seam at the baseboard and pulls. The paint cracks. The joint compound crumbles. A 3-foot section of drywall tears away, revealing the studs underneath. And behind the studs, more drywall. A double wall. Someone didn't just cover the door. They built an entirely new wall in front of the old one. The smell intensifies. That chemical smell, that disinfectant smell, pouring out of the gap like something under pressure. Both men step back, coughing. "The hell is that?" Omar says, pulling his shirt over his nose and mouth. "I don't know." Liam's eyes are watering. The smell is so strong it's almost a physical presence, a wall of its own. Keep going. They tear away more drywall. The work is loud in the empty hallway, the sound of splintering wood and ripping paper echoing through the building. Behind the first layer of drywall is a layer of plastic sheeting. Industrial-grade plastic, the kind used for asbestos abatement, thick and heavy, taped edge to edge with the meticulous care of someone trying to create a perfect seal. Liam cuts through the plastic with his utility knife. The smell that pours out is indescribable. It's not just disinfectant anymore. Underneath the chemicals is something organic, something that makes Liam's stomach turn, something that smells like death. Behind the plastic is the original wall, the original door to room 212. The brass numbers, tarnished black with age but still legible. 212. The door is closed, locked from the outside with a heavy-duty padlock, the kind used on storage units, with a thick metal body and a hardened steel shackle. Omar takes a step back. His face has gone pale. "Boss, we need to stop. We need to call someone." "We're already here," Liam says. His voice sounds distant, disconnected from his body. "We're already opening it." He positions the crowbar against the door frame, braces his foot against the wall, and pulls. The wood is old and soft with rot. The frame splinters. The screws holding the padlock hasp tear free from the door frame in a shower of wood dust and rust. The padlock dangles uselessly from the door. Liam tries the door handle. It turns. The door swings inward on hinges that shriek like they're in pain. The smell that pours out of room 212 is a living thing. It washes over them in a wave, so powerful that Omar actually gags and stumbles backward. Liam holds his ground, but he's breathing through his mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. He raises his flashlight. The room beyond the door is small. Too small. His flashlight beam sweeps across the space. Maybe 12 feet deep. Definitely not the 18 feet the blueprint shows. The back wall is different from the rest of the room. Newer drywall. Fire retardant type, the kind introduced in the early 90s. Someone took room 212 and cut it in half. But that's not what makes Liam's blood run cold. The room looks lived in. Frozen in time, but lived in. There's a bed against the left wall. A cheap motel bed with a sagging mattress covered in a faded floral bedspread. A small wooden desk against the right wall. A chair tipped over on its side. And on the floor, partially hidden under the bed, a backpack, faded denim, the kind college students carried in the 90s. The walls are covered in a strange white residue. It coats everything. The floor, the furniture, the windows. Like someone dusted the entire room with powder. "Boss," Omar says from the doorway. His voice is shaking. "We need to leave. Right now." But Liam can't move, because he's seen something else. Something on the floor near the bed. A piece of paper, yellowed with age, curled at the edges. He shouldn't touch it. He knows he shouldn't touch it. This is a crime scene. This has to be a crime scene. But his curiosity overpowers his common sense. He steps carefully into the room, avoiding the areas with the white residue, and crouches down. The paper is brittle. He can barely make out the handwriting. Block letters, pressed hard into the paper, like whoever wrote it was angry or desperate or both. They tried to bury the truth. Liam's hands start shaking. He stands up quickly, backing toward the door. His flashlight beam sweeps across the room one more time. And that's when he sees it. The back wall, the false back wall made of newer drywall. There's a gap at the bottom. A gap where the drywall doesn't quite meet the floor. A bone. White and clean and unmistakable. A human bone. "Omar," Liam says. His voice comes out as a whisper. "Call 911. "What?" "Call 911. Right now. Tell them we found something." Omar disappears. Liam can hear his footsteps pounding down the hallway, hear his voice echoing up the stairwell as he shouts orders to the crew below. Liam stands frozen in the doorway of room 212, his flashlight trained on that gap at the bottom of the false wall, on that bone that's been hidden here for 30 years. His mind is racing. The note, the sealed room, the false wall, the bone. Someone died in room 212. Someone died, and someone else sealed the room. Covered it up, erased it from the building like it never existed. Liam's flashlight beam moves across the room again, slower this time, taking in every detail. The bed, the backpack, the overturned chair, the white residue coating everything. And then his beam catches something else, something he missed the first time. On the small desk against the wall, partially hidden under a layer of dust and that white powder, is a stack of papers. He knows he shouldn't. He knows he should wait for the police. But he can't help himself. He steps back into the room, moving carefully, and approaches the desk. The papers are old, yellowed, water-damaged around the edges. But the text is still readable. Official letterhead, Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and a name, handwritten in the margin, Ethan Holloway. Liam hears sirens in the distance, getting louder, getting closer. Red and blue lights start flashing through the gaps in the boarded windows at the end of the hallway. The Oakhaven Inn, silent for 30 years, is about to give up its secrets. And Liam O'Connell, the contractor who just needed a job, the man who took this contract to save his failing business, is standing in the doorway of room 212, staring at evidence of a crime that's been hidden for 3 decades, knowing that nothing will ever be simple again. The sirens get louder, car doors slam, voices shout commands, heavy boots pound up the stairs. Liam backs out of the room, his hands raised, his flashlight still clutched in one fist. The first officer appears at the end of the hallway, weapon drawn, flashlight cutting through the darkness. Richmond PD. "Show me your hands." "I'm the contractor," Liam shouts back. "I'm the one who called." Room 212. There's a body in room 212. More officers appear. They secure the hallway, clear the other rooms, establish a perimeter. Liam and Omar are moved downstairs, separated, questioned. What were they doing? Why were they opening that wall? What did they see? Liam tells them everything. The missing 6 feet. The sealed room. The note. The bone. 2 hours later, as Liam sits in the back of his truck, drinking terrible coffee from a paper cup and watching a stream of police vehicles, crime scene investigators, and what looks like the entire Richmond Police Department's homicide unit converge on the Oakhaven Inn. A detective approaches him. She's in her 40s, black, with sharp eyes and an air of authority that makes Liam straighten up automatically. She's wearing a dark suit and holding a tablet. "Liam O'Connell?" she asks. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Detective Alana Ray, Richmond PD Homicide. I need you to walk me through exactly what you found in there." Liam tells her everything again, more detailed this time. The measurements, the sealed door, the smell, the note, the false back wall, the bone. Detective Ray listens without interrupting. When he finishes, she's quiet for a long moment, staring at the building. "Room 212, she finally says. "This is going to sound strange, but my aunt worked a missing persons case in 1995. 2 college students, young couple. They were staying at this motel and they just vanished. She investigated it for months, talked to the owner, searched the rooms, interviewed every guest who'd stayed here that week. Nothing. They were just gone." Liam feels ice water run down his spine. "What were their names?" Detective Ray looks down at her tablet. Her jaw tightens. Ethan Holloway and Willow Diaz. The name from the papers on the desk. Ethan Holloway. "I need to see that room," Detective Ray says. "Listen, if you're still here, if this story has grabbed you, I need you to do something right now. Don't just listen and scroll away. Hit that subscribe button, Leave a comment telling us what you think happened in room 212. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because Cold Trail doesn't exist without you. These stories don't get told without your engagement. Every share, every comment, every subscription tells us that cases like this matter. That Ethan Holloway and Willow Diaz matter. That the truth matters, even when it's been buried for 30 years. So don't wait. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications, because we're going to show you exactly what Liam and Detective Ray found when they breached that false wall. And I promise you, the truth is darker than you can imagine. This is Cold Trail, and we don't let the truth stay buried. Detective Ray suited up in full protective gear before entering room 212. Liam watched from the hallway as she swept her flashlight across the space, methodical and thorough, examining everything without touching anything. When she emerged 20 minutes later, her face was grim. "We need to open that back wall," she said. "But we're doing this by the book. I need crime scene here. I need the medical examiner on standby. And I need you and your crew chief to assist. You're the only ones who know how to breach that wall safely." It took 4 hours to assemble the team. 4 hours of waiting in the parking lot while police vehicles multiplied like cells dividing, while crime scene tape wrapped around the entire building, while news vans started appearing on Williamsburg Road, their satellite dishes pointed at the sky like accusations. Omar stood next to Liam, arms crossed, staring at the motel. "We should have just started on the first floor," he said quietly. "We'd have found it eventually. Maybe. Or maybe we'd have torn down the whole building and never known." Liam didn't respond. Because Omar was right. If they'd followed the original plan, if they'd started on the first floor and worked their way up, they might have demolished the second floor without ever questioning that sealed wall. Room 212 would have been crushed and hauled away with the rest of the debris, its secrets buried in a landfill somewhere in Chesterfield County. At 3:47 p.m., Detective Ray called them back inside. The second-floor hallway was now blazing with portable work lights powered by a generator. Crime scene had set up equipment, photographers, evidence collection kits, a forensic team in white Tyvek suits. "Mr. O'Connell," Ray said, "I need you and Mr. Jenkins to enter room 212 and breach the back wall. But you do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you, and you stop immediately if I say stop. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." Room 211 was a mirror image of what Liam expected from room 212. Same layout, same dimensions, same water-damaged furniture and peeling wallpaper. They set up their equipment on the floor, unrolling the blueprints under the harsh glare of work lights. Liam measured the room again, this time with a laser distance finder for precision. From the hallway wall to the back wall of room 211, 12 feet, 3 inches, according to the 1,967 architectural plans. Both rooms should be 18 feet deep. 5 feet, 9 inches missing, Liam said aloud, marking it on the blueprint. Omar ran his hand along the shared wall, between 211 and 212. "This is original construction," he said, tapping the plaster. 1,960 seconds work. But that back wall. He moved to the rear wall of the room, the exterior wall that should face the parking lot. "This is newer. Look at the texture. Look at the seams." Liam examined it closely. Omar was right. The back wall was drywall, not plaster. Fire retardant type X drywall, identifiable by its slight pink tint. Common in commercial construction after 1990. Someone had demolished the original back wall and rebuilt it 6 feet forward, shrinking the room and creating a hidden space behind it. They breached the shared wall first, cutting through from room 211 into 212 with a reciprocating saw. The blade chewed through the old plaster and lath, sending up clouds of dust that their respirators filtered out. When they pulled away a section large enough to step through, Liam found himself standing in room 212 for the second time that day. The crime scene team had already been through, photographing everything, marking evidence with numbered placards. The backpack was still on the floor. The note was sealed in an evidence bag. But the room felt different now, populated with people and lights, and the clinical efficiency of an investigation. Detective Ray stood near the false back wall, running her gloved hand along its surface. "This is what we're opening," she said. "Carefully. I want to preserve as much as possible." Liam and Omar positioned themselves on either side of the wall. They started at the bottom, prying away the baseboard to expose the gap where Liam had seen the bone. More bones were visible now in the work lights. Small bones. Finger bones, maybe. All clean and white. "Hold," Ray commanded. She crouched down, examining the bones with a flashlight. She said nothing, but her jaw tightened. They continued working their way up, removing the drywall in sections, handing each piece to a crime scene technician who cataloged and photographed it. The wall came down slowly, deliberately. Behind the drywall was empty space, just darkness and that overwhelming chemical smell and something else. Something that made Liam's hands shake as he worked. The wall was 3/4 removed when Liam's pry bar hit something solid, not a stud. Something else. He pulled away more drywall, and his flashlight beam caught fabric. Faded denim, a jacket. "Stop," Ray said. "Everyone stop." She approached the opening, her flashlight joining Liam's. The beams illuminated what lay beyond the false wall. A space roughly 6 feet deep, stretching the width of the room. And in that space, on a simple metal cot pushed against the original exterior wall, 2 figures lay side by side. They were mummified, their skin drawn tight over bone, their clothing deteriorated but recognizable. The young man wore a denim jacket over a faded band t-shirt. The young woman wore a floral dress that might have been pretty once. Their hands were clasped together between them, fingers intertwined. The room went silent. Even the generator seemed to quiet. Liam stared at the bodies, at the way they lay together, and felt something break inside his chest. They looked peaceful, like they'd fallen asleep and simply never woken up. Detective Ray's voice was barely a whisper. Ethan and Willow, one of the crime scene techs, a young woman who couldn't be more than 25, made a soft sound of distress. Ray gestured for everyone to step back. "Photograph everything," she said. "And someone call the ME. Tell them we need them here now." Liam backed out of the room, his legs unsteady. In the hallway, he pulled off his respirator and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Omar appeared beside him, equally shaken. 30 years, Omar said. "They've been here 30 years. Behind them, through the opening in the wall, camera flashes strobed like lightning, documenting the scene, preserving the evidence, recording the final resting place of 2 people who checked into the Oakhaven Inn in 1995 and never checked out. The medical examiner arrived at 6:15 p.m. Dr. Sarah Chen, a slight woman in her 50s, who moved with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd seen too many bodies to be shocked anymore. She suited up and entered room 212 without hesitation. Liam watched from the hallway as she examined the bodies in situ, taking measurements, documenting position, speaking quietly into a digital recorder. When she emerged 40 minutes later, she pulled down her mask and addressed Detective Ray. "Preliminary assessment. 2 victims, male and female, early 20s. Based on decomposition and environmental conditions, time of death approximately 25 to 30 years ago. Bodies show signs of chemical treatment, likely ozone or industrial disinfectant, which accelerated mummification. I'll know more after the autopsy." "But detective, they didn't die naturally. Homicide." "Almost certainly." Ray nodded like she'd expected this. She turned to the crime scene team. "I want every inch of that hidden space processed. Every fiber, every hair, every print. And that backpack. I want to know what's inside it." They worked through the night. Liam and Omar stayed, though they weren't officially needed anymore. They sat in room 211, drinking coffee that one of the officers brought, watching crime scene investigators move in and out of room 212 like worker ants, each carrying something. Evidence bags, camera equipment, Portable lights. At 11:47 p.m., one of the techs called out, "Detective, you need to see this." Liam followed Ray into the hidden space. The bodies had been carefully removed, leaving only the cot and the accumulated debris of 30 years. The tech was crouched near the head of the cot, pointing at something beneath the metal frame. A backpack. Not the one from the main room. A different backpack. Olive green canvas, military surplus style. The tech carefully extracted it and set it on a tarp. Ray unzipped it slowly, documenting each step with her phone camera. Inside were papers. Lots of papers, all protected in plastic sheet protectors, yellowed but readable. Ray pulled out the first one and read aloud. Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. Environmental Site Assessment. Oak Haven Inn. 2847 Williamsburg Road, Richmond, Virginia. She flipped through more pages. Water samples. Soil samples. Chemical analysis. This is a full environmental inspection. More documents. A legal brief. Partially completed, with handwritten notes in the margins. A student ID card in a plastic window. Ethan Holloway, Virginia Commonwealth University. Environmental Science. Class of 1997. And a letter, typed on VCU letterhead, dated the 10th of March, 1995. Ray read it silently, her expression darkening with each line. When she finished, she looked at Liam. Ethan Holloway was a student intern with the Virginia DEQ. He was conducting an environmental assessment of this property as part of his senior thesis. According to this letter, he found evidence of illegal toxic waste dumping behind the motel, chemical solvents, industrial cleaners, potentially carcinogenic materials being dumped directly into the groundwater. Who owned the motel in 1995? Liam asked. Ray pulled out her phone. Made a call. Brief conversation. Mostly listening. When she hung up, her face was stone. Arthur Vance. Owned the Oak Haven Inn from 1987 to 2018. Died in 2018. His son inherited the property and sold it at auction in 2024. So Ethan found evidence that Arthur Vance was poisoning the groundwater, Liam said slowly. And then Ethan and his girlfriend disappeared, and were sealed in a room in the same motel where Vance was dumping the waste. Ray looked back at the cot where the bodies had lain. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Ethan was going to blow the whistle, and Vance killed him for it. Killed both of them. A female officer appeared in the doorway. Detective Ray. There's someone here asking for you. Says her name is Patricia Ray. Says she's your aunt. Detective Ray's face went pale. She turned to Liam. Wait here. She disappeared into the hallway. Liam could hear voices, low and urgent, emotional. When Ray returned 5 minutes later, an older woman was with her. Late 60s, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a cardigan despite the warm night. This is my aunt, Detective Ray said. Patricia Ray. She was Richmond PD for 32 years. Retired in 2010. Patricia Ray's eyes were red. She stared at the opening into the hidden space. It was them, she said hoarsely. It was always them. I knew it. I told everyone it was this motel. That owner. Something wasn't right. But I couldn't prove it. The owner, Arthur Vance, he said they'd skipped town, showed me a credit card charge in North Carolina, said they'd driven down there and just kept going. Said kids do that sometimes. Run away from debt, from responsibility. You investigated them as missing persons, Liam asked. For 8 months. It was my case. Ethan's mother called every week, asking if we'd found anything. Willow's family flew in from California twice, begging for answers. Patricia's hands were shaking. And they were here the whole time, in this building. While I was interviewing Arthur Vance in his office downstairs, while I was searching rooms on the first floor, they were right here. 30 years. 30 years that family suffered not knowing. Detective Alana Ray put her arm around her aunt's shoulders. "We know now," she said quietly. "We found them. We're going to get them justice." Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Liam. "Thank you. Thank you for not just tearing it all down. Thank you for looking." Liam didn't know what to say. He just nodded. Behind them, the crime scene team continued working. Photographing, documenting, collecting, building the case against a dead man, and hopefully against whoever helped him keep this secret for 3 decades. The Oakhaven Inn had finally given up its ghosts, but the investigation was just beginning. The discovery came at 2:34 a.m. A CSI specialist named Rodriguez was processing the underside of the metal cot when his gloved fingers found something taped to the frame. He called Detective Ray over immediately. It was a small, rectangular device, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic, sealed with duct tape that had yellowed and cracked with age. Rodriguez carefully cut away the tape and extracted what looked like a silver portable music player, slightly larger than a deck of cards. "Minidisc player," Rodriguez said, turning it over in his hands. "Sony MZR-50. Popular in the mid-90s. Digital audio format. This thing's ancient." Ray stared at it. "Will it still work?" "Only one way to find out." Rodriguez found the battery compartment, corroded but intact. He produced a fresh battery from his kit, installed it, and pressed play. Static crackled through the tiny speaker. Then a voice emerged. Male, slurred. The words running together like the speaker was drunk or exhausted or both, but unmistakable. "March 17th, 1995, 3:15 in the morning. My name is Arthur Vance, and I killed them. The kid, Ethan Holloway, and his girlfriend Willow. They're in room 212 right now. Behind the wall I'm going to build. They threatened me. The kid said he had evidence. Toxic waste, groundwater contamination, lawsuits that would destroy me. He was going to the EPA, said I'd lose everything." The room fell completely silent. Every person stopped what they were doing. Rodriguez turned up the volume. "I couldn't let that happen. I worked too hard for this place. 30 years building this business. So I locked them in 212. I had a commercial ozone generator, the industrial kind for mold remediation. I sealed the room and ran it for 48 hours. They suffocated, clean, no blood, no mess. The ozone masked the smell, accelerated the decomposition. Then I built the wall, double-sealed it, made it look like the room never existed." A long pause, heavy breathing. Then Arthur Vance's voice again, quieter now, almost contemplative. "I'm keeping this recording as insurance. If my son ever tries to sell this place, if anyone ever threatens to demolish it, they'll find this. They'll know what I did. Room 212 is my trophy, my secret. Nobody touches it. Nobody ever opens it." The recording clicked off. Detective Ray stood frozen, her face unreadable. Then she turned to Rodriguez. "Make copies, multiple copies. That's our confession. That's everything we need." Within 2 hours, Ray had compiled a case file and submitted warrant requests for every property and storage unit associated with Arthur Vance's estate. By dawn, she had judicial approval. By 8 a.m., she was standing outside a U-Haul storage facility in Mechanicsville, with Liam, Omar, and 6 uniformed officers. Unit 247 belonged to Dean Vance, Arthur's son, who'd inherited the Oakhaven Inn in 2018 and sold it 6 years later. The manager cut the lock, and the door rolled up, revealing a cramped space packed with boxes, old furniture, and filing cabinets. Ray went straight for the filing cabinets. 3rd drawer down, she found a manila folder labeled Oakhaven, room 212. Inside were Arthur's personal notes, construction invoices from 1995, and a letter dated August 2023, handwritten on lined notebook paper. Ray read it aloud, her voice tight. Dad kept this secret for 23 years before he told me. Made me promise never to touch room 212. But I can't live with it anymore. I'm hiring a demolition crew. I'm tearing down that wing. Maybe then the nightmares will stop. The letter continued. But the electrical fire last week changed everything. Started in the second-floor hallway, right outside where 212 used to be. Fire marshal said it was a fault in the old wiring, but I know better. I know what it was. A warning. A curse. Dad said the room was his trophy, but I think it became his tomb. I'm not touching it. I'm selling the whole property and walking away. Ray looked up from the letter. He knew. Dean Vance knew exactly what was behind that wall, and he sold the property anyway without disclosing it. That's accessory after the fact, obstruction of justice, and probably half a dozen other charges. She made a phone call. 20 minutes later, Dean Vance was arrested at his home in Short Pump. Dean Vance waived his right to remain silent within 30 minutes of his arrest. Sitting in an interview room at Richmond PD headquarters, he told Detective Ray everything. How his father confessed the murders on his deathbed in 2018. How Arthur made Dean promise to protect room 212, to never let anyone open it. How Dean tried to live with the knowledge but couldn't. The nightmares started immediately, Dean said, his voice hollow. Every night I'd dream about that room, about what was inside it. I'd hear them screaming even though Dad said they died quiet. I couldn't keep running the motel. I closed it down. But selling it felt like murder too, like I was betraying them. Ray listened without expression. So you decided to demolish the wing. I thought if the room was gone, if there was no evidence left, maybe I could move on. Maybe they could move on. Dean's hands shook as he wiped his face. But then the fire happened, right outside 212. The fire marshal said faulty wiring, but the wiring in that section was replaced in 2010. I knew it wasn't an accident. I knew it was them, stopping me from destroying the evidence. So I walked away, sold the whole property at auction and tried to forget. You could have called the police, Ray said coldly. At any time in the last 7 years, you could have told someone, and admit my father was a murderer. Destroy his legacy. He wasn't a monster. He was just desperate. He killed 2 innocent people and sealed them in a wall like garbage. Ray stood. And you helped him keep that secret. You're going to prison, Mr. Vance. The evidence was overwhelming. The minidisc confession, Dean's letter, his own admission. The district attorney filed charges within 48 hours. 2 counts of accessory after the fact to murder, obstruction of justice, concealing a death. But before the arraignment, Detective Ray had one more task. She drove to Newport News with Liam to meet Ethan Holloway's mother, Margaret, the woman who'd called the Richmond Police Department every week for 8 months in 1995, begging for answers about her missing son. Margaret Holloway was 73 now, living in a small ranch house with photos of Ethan covering every surface. Young Ethan at graduation. Ethan holding a fish he'd caught. Ethan with Willow. Both of them laughing. Both of them alive and beautiful and gone. When Detective Ray explained what they'd found, Margaret Holloway wept. Not the loud, dramatic crying of fresh grief, but the quiet, exhausted tears of someone who'd been waiting 30 years for permission to mourn. I knew he didn't run away, Margaret whispered, holding Liam's hand. Everyone said he got scared about student loans, about growing up. But I knew my son. He wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have left without telling me. She listened to the minidisc recording. Listened to Arthur Vance confess to murdering her boy. When it finished, she nodded once, almost peaceful. Thank you, she said to Liam. Thank you for not just tearing it down. Thank you for finding him. They drove to California next, to meet Willow's family. Same conversation, same tears, same gratitude mixed with 3 decades of grief finally validated. On the flight back to Richmond, Liam stared out the window at the clouds and realized something fundamental had shifted inside him. The $2.3 million contract didn't matter anymore. Saving his business didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd found two people who deserved to be found, and he'd given their families the truth. Liam never demolished the Oakhaven Inn. Instead, he bought it, used every dollar of the $2.3 million contract, plus a loan his sister co-signed, and purchased the property from the developer who'd hired him. The developer was happy to walk away from what had become a media nightmare. Liam's first act was establishing the Holloway Diaz Environmental Justice Fund, a scholarship program for students studying environmental science, with special priority given to those investigating corporate pollution and environmental crimes. Margaret Holloway cut the ribbon at the announcement ceremony, tears streaming down her face as she thanked Liam for turning her son's death into something that might save others. His second act was cleaning up the toxic waste site behind the motel. The EPA confirmed Arthur Vance had been dumping industrial solvents and chemical cleaners into the groundwater for at least a decade. Liam paid for the full remediation out of pocket. It took 8 months and cost him nearly everything he had left. But when it was finished, the land was clean. He converted it into a memorial garden. Native Virginia plants, walking paths, benches overlooking a small pond. At the center, a granite monument with Ethan and Willow's names, their photos, and a single line. They tried to bury the truth, but the truth always finds light. The room 212 wall was preserved behind glass inside what remained of the motel's second floor. Visitors could see the sealed door, the space where the bodies were found, the evidence of a crime that tried to erase itself from history. It became a strange pilgrimage site. Families of missing persons came to pay respects. Environmental activists used it as a rallying point. True crime podcasters made episodes about it. Liam's business never recovered, but he didn't care. He took a job as a construction supervisor for the city, steady pay and benefits, nothing glamorous. His evenings were spent maintaining the memorial garden and managing the scholarship fund. On the first anniversary of the discovery, Margaret Holloway visited the garden with Willow's mother, Carmen Diaz. They sat together on a bench, two mothers who'd spent 30 years in limbo, finally allowed to grieve properly. Liam watched from a distance, giving them privacy. Detective Ray found him there. She'd been promoted to lieutenant after closing the case. Dean Vance was serving 12 years. Arthur Vance's name was mud in Richmond, his legacy destroyed exactly as he'd feared. "You did good," Ray said to Liam. "I just opened a wall. You did more than that. You refused to look away." She gestured at the garden, at the memorial, at Margaret and Carmen holding hands on the bench. "This matters. They matter." That night, alone in his apartment, Liam stood at his window looking out at the city lights of Richmond. He thought about room 212, about how close he'd come to just demolishing it without question, to burying Ethan and Willow forever in a landfill somewhere. He thought about the note he'd found. They tried to bury the truth, but the truth couldn't stay buried. Not forever. It just needed someone willing to look, someone who refused to accept the easy answer, someone who measured the space between what should be and what actually was and demanded to know why. The motel room was finally quiet, not because the ghosts had left, but because the truth had finally been allowed to speak.